Good evening. My name is Sharon Torres, and today I am live with you where the Chernobyl accident took place. Going more into depth tonight, we revisit the night of April 26, 1986, when an explosion tore through Reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. What began as a routine safety test spiraled into one of the worst nuclear disasters in history, an event whose health, social, and political consequences continue to unfold. I now introduce to you my co-anchor, Sandra, who will be providing more information over this treacherous night.
Thank you, Sharon, for that introduction. My name is Sandra Mendoza, and I will be going more into detail about the horrible accident that took place and endangered the life of many. At the time of the blast, more than 200 workers were on site. Many of them received doses that were far beyond safe limits, and some even suffered whole body equivalent doses that exceeded 1 whole sievert, while the average equivalent dose among roughly 250,000 residents within the 200 miles of the reactor was about 0.2 sieverts. In some of these cases, thyroid doses reached several sieverts from drinking milk contaminated with radioactive iodine. These aren't just numbers on a chart. These are the stories of communities that had no warning. Now we will go back to you, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. How chilling to hear all those horrendous details. Adding on to that, the human toll came swiftly. More than 24 plant workers and first responders died from on-site injuries and the effects of extremely high radiation exposures at more than 4 sieverts. Over the years, the health legacy has been marked by thyroid cancer in children and adolescents who lived in the most heavily exposed areas, a rise in breast cancer in some regions, and long-term uncertainty for hundreds of thousands. Back to you, Sandra.
Thank you, Sharon. This event took everybody by surprise. Not only did it take the residents by surprise, but Chernobyl was also a huge political shock. Radiation was first publicly flagged by Sweden, forcing the Soviet news agencies to make a brief announcement on April 28, 2 days after the explosion. The nearby city of Pripyat, just 1.86 miles away, wasn't evacuated until April 27. Many residents reported a metallic taste, nausea, and headaches before they were told to board buses for 3 whole days. These days soon became into decades. Back to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sandra. Now we will get into interviewing the folks who experienced Chernobyl firsthand. Tonight we bring you a scientist who explains why the disaster happened, a fireman who recalls the first hours, and residents whose lives were divided into before and after. We'll end with how the world responded and what it still means today. Now let's head into her lab so I can introduce you to one of the scientists who partook in the discoveries of the Chernobyl nuclear accident. Please welcome our scientist Kelsey as soon as we make it into her lab.
To understand Chernobyl, you have to understand the RBMK reactor. It had a positive void coefficient, which made it unstable at low power. On the night of the accident, operators attempted a turbine rundown safety test to see if the spinning turbines could power critical systems in a blackout. But to run it, they disabled automatic shutdown mechanisms and compromised safety, essentially removing the brakes on a car to see how far it rolls. With safety systems off and the reactor at dangerously low power, reactivity spiked. At 1:23 a.m., the power surged. Fuel channels ruptured, steam exploded, and the graphite monitor ignited. The core was exposed, and the roof blew twice. Radioactive material shot to the atmosphere. The operators were left fighting a disaster the design almost guaranteed once safeguards were bypassed. But Chernobyl wasn't just a technical failure. It was a systematic failure. Training gaps, miscommunication, and a culture of secrecy kept critical design hazards from being widely known, even to the people running the plant. The Soviet system valued secrecy, speed, and appearances over rigorous safety and transparency. when you combine a reactor vulnerable at low power, disabled safety, and institutional silence, catastrophic things happen, and it becomes a chain reaction. We often say human error, but the errors were designed into the system, in hardware, in procedures, and in policy. Understanding that is the first step to ensuring it never happens again. And here we have a Geiger counter that they used, not the exact same one, but they used one of these to see how much radiation was around. I don't know if you can hear it, but this thing will set it off. It's from an old Coleman lamp, which had some radioactive stuff in it, and it goes off. There you have it. Bye.
Thank you, ladies, for that. Now here I'd like to introduce you to one of the residents who actually resided in Chernobyl at the time of the accident. Please welcome Hannah.
Hello everybody, my name is Hannah Zamora and I am one of the residents who was affected by the Chernobyl nuclear accident. I resided in this very home at the time. The nuclear plant exploded. My family and I were in disbelief at what just happened. It was such a long night, something I'll remember for the rest of my life. I was feeling fear and confusion as to what just happens next. The morning after, the buses lined the streets. The soldiers said 3 days, just pack essentials. So we left our clothes in the lines, the pets in the yard, in the garden my mother had planted every spring. 3 days turned into forever. We got new apartments, but we never got to return to our home again. These are my loved ones who were affected. It took a huge toll on my family and I, and those around me. My neighbors, some have thyroid problems now, some even had cancer. Children and adolescents who were closer to the plume were most affected in the years after. You don't see radiation, but you see in its afterlife, in checkups, in scars, in the empty spaces where people used to be. Not everyone stayed away. Some elderly self-settlers came back to the exclusion zone. 75 to 87-year-olds, they chose home over exile. They were mainly older women who returned their homes. They were nicknamed the babushkas. They farmed their plants, kept chickens, traded mushrooms, and made a life in a place only people whisper about now. It's hard to judge them. Home is more than its safety. My family and I try to go back to our daily routine, only later to notice unusual events. Helicopters overhead, a strange metallic taste in the air, or soldiers setting up checkpoints when evacuations finally came through. It's identity. And then there's tourism. They call it dark tourism. In 2019, about 124,000 people visited. Tour guides, often people who knew firefighters or cleanup workers, led the groups through Priyat's school rooms and the reactor shadow. Still, for us, Chernobyl isn't an adventure. It's a place of loss. When I hear about tourists walking through Priyat with cameras, I feel torn. On one hand, I want the world to see what happened here. The empty playgrounds, the apartments where families once laughed, the silence that replaced our lives. But for me, this isn't a strange abandoned city. It was a home. Every cracked wall, broken windows, they hold memories. People who never came back. To the watch visitors treated as eerie adventures, sometimes even entertainment, is painful now. Yet, I also understand that their presence means that the world remembers us and remembers the cost. Maybe if they see it with their own eyes, they'll understand that Chernobyl was not just a disaster, but a wound that still bleeds for those of us who lived it. Sometimes I go back on a day pass. I stand in front of our building and listen. The city hum is gone, and you hear wind through birch trees and the echo of life you almost remember. That's Chernobyl for me. Memory with the sound turned down.
It's so heartbreaking to hear what Hannah had to endure. Thank you so much for sharing your side of the story. Now back to you, Sharon, so we can welcome our next guest.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for that. Now for our final guest, I'd like to introduce to you guys our fire captain, Patricia Caldera.
My name is Captain Patty Caldera, and I've been a firewoman here at Priyat for a few years now. I've got a husband at home and a little boy who thinks the helmet is the greatest toy in the world. Most nights the city is quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you forget the world outside our little town. We are just regular men and women, neighbors, wives, husbands, mothers, and fathers doing our duty. That night we were told, fire at the plant. Standard call. We grabbed our hoses and went in. No protective suits for radiation, no dosimeters. We didn't know the reactor core was open to the night air. We saw flames and heat unlike anything I've ever felt. Within minutes, I tasted metal. Some of us started vomiting, others got dizzy. We thought it was smoke, it was radiation. The city 2 miles away, Priyat, was still asleep. By morning, kids went to school, grown-ups went to work. Some watched the glow from rooftops, not knowing the dust was radioactive fallout. Evacuation came 36 hours later. We'd already taken dangerous doses, so had many families. Then came the messages from Moscow. At first, a minor accident. Later, blame on operators, on a few plant leaders, trials, prison terms for some. But those of us who were there knew this wasn't about a few bad decisions that night. It was years of shortcuts and secrecy. Workers stretched thin, equipment and materials below standard, and deadlines that made safety an afterthought. We carried that truth in our bodies. Some of us still do. We did our job. We put water on the fire, but we were outmatched by something we couldn't see. The kind of danger you only hear in the click of a counter and feel as a burn that doesn't stop. I remember looking at my friend beside me, his face already swollen and red latches in his hands. We knew something was terribly wrong, but there was no turning back. Our duty was to protect, to contain, to save others from whatever was happening inside that building. That night changed everything. We weren't just fighting fire. We were standing in the middle of an invisible enemy. One we couldn't understand, an enemy that followed us home, into our very blood. My team and I were heavily affected by this accident. We saw our very lives changed overnight. We are lucky to have made it out alive when so many did not. And for those who continue to be impacted by this tragedy, our thoughts and prayers are with them.
Sorry to hear all the fear you had to endure in one night. Thank you for sharing and for risking your life. Now, with all the information our wonderful guest provided to us, let's touch a little more on what was done after the accident. In the intermediate aftermath, the Soviets built a concrete sarcophagus over Reactor 4 to contain the ruins. Decades later, with coordination by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the Chernobyl Shelter Fund helped build a new safe confinement. A massive steel arc slid over the old structure to isolate the remains and enable decommissioning. More than 40 countries contributed, turning catastrophe into a global mandate for cooperation. Chernobyl also reshaped nuclear governance. The International Atomic Energy Agency led the development of a global nuclear safety regime, which includes the Convention on Nuclear Safety 1994 and the Joint Convention of the Safety of Spent Fuel Management 1997, peer review systems, and strengthened IAEA safety standards. The crisis forced a reckoning. Safety had to be international, verifiable, and transparent. Now passing it back to my partner to share more details with y'all.
Thank you, Sharon. But transparency came late for those who were already exposed. Estimates anticipate thousands of additional cancer deaths among those exposed cohorts over a lifetime. These projections sit alongside the day-to-day realities, medical surveillance, community displacement, and a moral debate about turning disaster sites into destinations for safe selfies and souvenirs. Ethically, we must weigh education and remembrance against sensation and spectacle. Guides who work with first responders warn that repeated long-term exposure is a risk to manage. even if a single tourist dose stays low. Meanwhile, the stories of firefighters, the silence of evacuated apartments, and the resolve of self-settlers ask for something very simple: respect.
Thank you all for hearing out what we had to share.
Chernobyl teaches that secrecy is dangerous, that safety systems exist for a reason, and that truth saves lives. For Kelsey seeking lessons in design, Patty remembering the night's heat, Hannah living in the afterlife exposure, and for everyone who still calls the land home, we remember. Good night, and thank you for tuning in.
Thing I'd ever felt.
Bro.
No. Breast cancer. Vincent, why are you laughing?
Vincent, she was almost done.
Do you think we need the mic for
While the average equivalent dose among Vincent, it's you.
Bro, cause she was laughing. She was laughing. Bro, she was 3, dude.
Guides who'd worked with the first response. So you fucking act, Vincent. You're like, okay, what? Alright, 1,
3, 2.
No.
Oh my god.
Dude, be
I do it
serious.
because I'm starting.
Thank you, lady. Okay. So,
Alright.
Cut.
some even suffered whole body equivalent.
Dude, I didn't do shit. Dude,
I'm gonna do 30 seconds.
why not? Do it. Just drag that shit.
Like, start recording? Okay, start it out. Sharon, you bring up a very good point. And it's made me think a little bit about what the fuck? Giving us more knowledge about how to prevent these accidents from occurring in the future.
I'm sorry. Hold on.
Sarcophagus.
Sarcophagus.
For everyone who was impacted by this widespread
Why spread?
Sorry to hear all the fear you had to.
Oh, she's looking that way, Sandra.
transparent to all.
3, 2.
You said that.
I know, mamas. Come on.
Okay. Sorry, damn. You speak Spanish? Thank you for sharing your life. Wait, this whole shadow right here, doesn't that look bad?
Action.
The morning after, buses line the streets. My garden mother planted every spring.
Back to that, at the time. Listen, stop
Dude.
laughing.
Radiation accident news article.
Start up.
And this is our home.
Oh, you came out the way. 3, 2, 1.
Ethically, we must wait
Whoa.
until
Death tonight, we revisit the night of April 20. Wait, I look too happy. Stop laughing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm here with Sandra, and that concludes. Sorry.
Our segment of this.
Man, I'm sorry.
Dude, is this the angle you're standing at, dummy?
Oh, me?
This is the angle you're standing. I think you guys should switch.
Okay.